everybody. How are you all doing? Well, if you want something visual that's not too abysmal, we could take in an old Steve Reeves movie, or we could do the movie we're doing today, which is Lifeforce from 1985. I am looking forward to talking about this with my fellow Cinema Crusaders. I had not seen this film before, so this is my first time reaction and review to it. Looking forward to hearing both from myself and Steve, who are first-time viewers of this, but also Jeff and Lance, who Lance is one who recommended this film for this week. We followed Patrick Stewart over here from Excalibur, doing our usual thing that we do now, where we are following the path of the movies. One actor leads into their performance in another movie. So we followed Patrick Stewart from Excalibur over here. And so I'm looking forward to getting into it. I just remembered I didn't do my usual greeting. So it is Friday afternoon here in Southern California. It's Friday evening over there on the East Coast. It's late Friday over there in Europe. It might even be Saturday wherever you are. But wherever you are, it's time for Cinema Crusaders and something visual that's not too abysmal, which we're going to bring to you right now. But first, let me introduce my fellow Cinema Crusaders. Tongue's not working. Cinema Crusaders. So first up is the man who recommended this film to all of us. He's the man behind Warehouse 9 Pro. Go to warehouse9pro.com to check out all of his award-winning films and his comic books. Just a very multi-talented man. I'm talking about none other than Lance Lucero. How you doing, Lance?
Hey, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to talk about this tour de force that is Lifeforce from 1985. I mean, this is going to be a fun talk because this is an outlandish film. It's outlandish.
Absolutely. Next, I'm going to bring up a man who is beautiful, who is witty, but is man enough that he can stand up to a great pair of titties. I'm talking about none other than Steve Shadewing Sellers. How you doing, Steve? And you'll understand why I said that in a minute. Yeah.
In space, no one can hear you simp.
Yeah.
that basically is this movie, and it's just ridiculous. This movie, I had not seen this movie. I mean, I was aware of it. Like it was out of the corner of my eye, like in the corner of Blockbuster, or one of those places way back in the day. I do remember having seen trailer boxes for this, but I never actually saw it until now. And I'm just looking at this movie and I'm thinking this movie goes all over the gamut, and it gives you whiplash because it starts off, being very much a space movie, and it kind of starts off that space horror movie, and then it gets into what I call so bad it's good, where it's just absolutely laughably ridiculous. And then what surprised me, though, was that it takes a turn midway through the movie, and then it actually starts becoming really interesting, and I kind of was into where it was going. So this is really like a movie which is this really combination of something promising, and then it's just kind of laughably bad, but it's entertaining nonetheless. So, and that's unique. There are not too many films I can think of that have done that for me.
I can think of a few, but I know exactly what you're saying. It's one of those movies you're like, I don't care. I'm enjoying it. I'm going to sit back with a drink, an adult beverage, and some popcorn and just enjoy this flick, So, and at the end of the day, isn't that what movies are supposed to do, is entertain us? So there it is. And last but not least, he is a multi-talented triple threat artist, writer, and just all around great role player as well. Person that I know, he's a friend of all of ours. That's right. He's backed. He's Jack, and he's not afraid to put a steel rod in a rack. None other than Jeff Baresi. And I'm sorry I didn't give you one of those intros, Lance. So
I have absolutely no idea what that last part means. Whatever.
Okay,
roll with it. I'll take it.
The steel rod that they used to kill the vampires? Come on. Roll with me here.
It was leaded iron.
Oh, excuse me.
Pay attention to the movie.
And I never caught the name of the weapon. Actually, I never caught It had an insignia. It was something from medieval times, but I guess
they totally didn't mention it. I was kind of waiting for that myself.
Not only that, where the hell did it come from?
It's on the box that he opened.
Yeah.
I know, but it's just like there's like, hey, MacGuffin, it's just here now. Now, unlike Steve,
why would they carry a thing that can kill them like right in their casket? Who the hell knows?
Was it actually on the ship, or was that something just delivered from somewhere? I didn't catch that.
No clue. So.
A script hole, but I think it was. I think the doctor had it delivered. I think it was something that he scrounged up from museum or something.
Yeah, I always got the impression that he was doing medieval research because he equates the vampires from space to the vampires from mythology. So it was nothing we saw on the ship. And if you look at the architecture and the technology on the ship, it doesn't relate to that at all. That thing looked very gothic. As a matter of fact, it reminded me of like some really old school lightning rods or spires that you would see on Gothic cathedrals. It had that kind of aspect to it. Now, I didn't have Steve's reaction to the movie. I found this movie to be horrifying back when I saw it back in 1981, which led to my Twitter post about like the movie sounds silly when you go like, oh, space vampires, but actually I thought it was rather gruesome. And upon watching it, I was reminded of something I don't think I connected back then, that this is Dracula. We have so many of the elements here. We have the space Demeter. We visit an asylum. You know, the female vampire, her coffin, her sacred earth that she has to sleep in is her body. She does all this body jumping instead. So like we have our vampire transformations. These things have a natural form as a bat-like form. You have to pierce them with an implement. A lot of people don't know in folklore, it really often was not a wooden stake, but often a iron stake or a lead stake, more or less to keep them in the coffin than anything else, but still. So all of these elements are there.
I would also add for just 1 second that Carlson is basically Space Mina Harker.
You didn't let me get there.
And Colin is basically Van Helsing.
Yep.
Yeah, you totally didn't let me get there because they share that mental connection.
I thought you were done.
No, I'm not done. I was still talking. You had your turn. This is my time now. Now I'm done.
Have fun.
But it's
What happened?
It is funny how they do play off the folklore a lot. They play off the folklore a lot, but with that science fiction twist, you know, back in 1985, which
was really cool.
Yeah, that's what sold me because this predates Lost Boys. This predates when vampires were still a thing cinematically, and then it just spun off the rails after that, and it's just so trite. It's just so boring. But this was to me a new take. And I was
let's give it up to Canon Films, the long lost and very beloved Canon Films, who really threw the bank at this movie. You know, this was a $25 million budget film, which was a huge deal for them back then. It looks good. I have some issues, like some of the effects are dated, but I still enjoy them. Mostly the space stuff. They definitely wanted to put most of their money into the stuff that was happening on the ground. They kind of gloss over the space stuff a little bit. You can see the composites pretty easily. But I really love the look of this film and the fact that they just went and, like Lance is saying, they did something original. How cool would it be to see somebody do that these days? To like take the old horse and put a new coat of paint on her and race her around the track and see what happens.
Yep.
Actually, yeah, I saw Lance had a comment on social media commenting on a post where they're thinking now of rebooting Darth Vader and Han and Leia and Luke and all that other stuff, and it's like why?
Forget about it. Yeah, it's in the past. So
but didn't we all know that was
movie
coming as
than
soon as Disney got their
You're
hooks
just not
into
going
it?
to.
Right, it's over with. But when you look at in 1985, we were still fresh cinematically. We were still doing cool things. I mean, this is a 70 millimeter Hammer film. If I really have to say it, to me, it reminds me of Hammer, but 10 times more glossy. And that whole feel is just, it's sexy. It's like, that's what you want to see. And every actor, this can spider out. It may not seem like that it's going to be an easy pick for a performer to go into another film, but there are plenty of performers to pick, spider out into some really great films. I mean, we already did Dragon Slayer, and you had the performer that played Tyrion in there as the orderly, giving him the truth syrup. So,
I I will also say that the Home Secretary, since I think Steve is up next, the Home Secretary
From A Clockwork Orange
is in a number of horror movies. And next week is the week before, Halloween. So that's all I'm going to say, including the Tales from the Crypt movies, but I'm not suggesting that we do those. I'm just saying he's in those too. So he's in a lot of Tales from the Crypt episodes. So
that's right.
It is. It wasn't back then though.
No,
Alien was kind of the first. Yeah. So Event Horizon was what, early 90s? So something like that.
Yes.
So let's do I'll do a brief synopsis and then we will get right into our topic. So briefly, this is very much starts off about Halley's Comet, because Halley's Comet is showing up in 1986 was a big deal, because it only comes every 76 years, etc. And so the ship, the Churchill, I believe it's called, is sent out and with a combined British and American crew to investigate Halley's Comet. And they get there and they find a unnatural object out there, and it turns out it's a ship. And they go on the ship and they find these creatures that are desiccated, and then find these three naked people in, for lack of a better term, glass coffins. That's not what they are, but we'll describe them as that. And one of them is a very, very naked woman, which immediately grabs your attention and demands your attention through the rest of the film. It's that serious a subject that there is a naked woman on screen. So I'll just put that out there.
One of the naked men is actually Mick Jagger's brother.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
And it's funny, Patrick Stewart brought us this movie, but he's only in the movie for like a hot minute, Yeah. So it
depending on what version you watch.
Really?
True.
Yes.
Well, see, and we'll get to that then. So
he is memorable in the time he gets.
We see that they bring those three beings onto the ship along with one of the desiccated creatures, and they take off. Next thing we know, I forget how much time it elapsed. I think it's like 60 days or something like that. But
30 days.
30 days. The Churchill is adrift in space, no communications, and they send up the Columbia, the actual space shuttle Columbia. 1985, Columbia is still around. And Columbia goes up there, and everything is burnt out in there. And later on, we find out that a escape pod had been jettisoned off of the ship. So right there, it's different than a normal space shuttle, but we're not gonna, that's fine. It's science fiction, whatever. So escape pod is missing. Everything's burnt out, but these three bodies in these glass coffins are still there. So of course, what do? They bring them down to Earth. So
because that's what you do with alien creatures. Bring them home.
So they start, and funny how life imitates art. Now we're bringing remains of asteroids down to Earth for real now, but that never turns out badly. Drama to strain, but I digress.
We really going to summarize the whole film?
Huh?
Are we really going to summarize the whole film?
Why? Do you not want me to?
I don't think we've ever done that before.
Good touch. I think it has a little bit of a background flair, so that if people know what they're going into, because like Steve said, this film's all over the place. It's
it is.
Well,
it's not really a traditional through line of any kind.
Break them home with some reaction xenomorphs. Exactly.
And of course, nobody follows quarantine protocols of any kind.
Yeah.
None.
Well,
they don't even bring them up in this movie. At least in Alien, you had Ripley saying, "Yeah, it might be a bad idea to bring the thing on board. Maybe we not to do these things." No, nobody ever brings it up. It's let's bring everything on board the ship, and then let's bring everything down on Earth. Let's not post a guard or anything.
I was about to say, I don't know if this is a version, if this is the difference between American paranoia versus British everything's chill and let's have some tea. But I was always surprised by they've got the body, the female sitting in there, and there's no security at all. She has almost no trouble when it's time for her to exit. They got a couple of rental cops, but if this had been in America, man, it would have been the most locked down security.
Oh, yeah.
Just loaded with soldiers.
I was wondering more than once why nobody ordered a full lockdown of the facility with armed guards and soldiers with rifles.
Apparently, they didn't have them.
So as we've already intimated, the being, at least one of the beings gets loose, and eventually all three of the beings get loose, the two men and the women. And of course, the one they choose to put on the slab in the laboratory,
the hot chick.
Dude, it's the hot chick to dissect.
Because that
and I'm like,
sells.
yeah, you know,
Space Vampira.
You know, and then
Yeah.
she gets up and she does her thing, the whole seductress movement and everything, and there's a lot going on here. But eventually, she just walks right out of the secure facility because the power of nudity overwhelms all of the soldiers. So that is a very important point. That is one of the most salient points in this whole movie, as far as I'm concerned. That the power of female nudity is strong in this.
Well,
movie.
the problem was like they didn't call down to the front desk and say like, "Hey, it's a naked alien lady." They just said, "Hey, it's a naked lady," because none of them mentioned alien lady at all. Like, because they're keeping those poor slobs in the dark. So like, whatever they encounter is whatever they encounter.
Yeah, that's a security breach. Don't say alien.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want that rumor to spread.
We don't
Like species, exactly.
Yeah.
Not only that, then she gets loose. She wanders into Hyde Park, and two boys in the park see her sucking face with another woman whose body she later steals. And of course, they don't say anything because they're hoping they can see two ladies getting it on. Yeah,
they pretty much admit it. That's what's funny about it.
I love that scene for that.
And at this point,
see something.
At this point, the movie is very realistic because I was like, yeah. So pretty much true, But long story short, she gets out, and for lack of a better term, the vampire virus starts spreading around, and people are transformed into desiccated corpses. And in 2 hours, they rise from the dead. And at this point, they actually look like zombies. So we got a little bit of Night of the Living Dead action going on, and they're going around. But if they don't feed within a certain amount of time, they explode into sand, and that is pretty gnarly. And the effects are cool. There's some cool effects, and there is some pretty visual stuff. I mean, we've got like a dismembered corpse at one time in a Jeep trying to get at a guy, or dismembered hand from a corpse. I mean, a dismembered arm. So
his arm comes off as he's reaching in the Jeep, and the Jeep takes off. And I kind of wondered about that scene because when we get to the finale, we've no longer got desiccated corpses, but they look more like zombies. And my mind starts going like, okay, so what's the progression? Does the vampirism effect like get less and less from like host to host, victim to victim, because now the bodies are juicier, they're more full. Some of them are even bleeding. If you remember the guys trying to get on the helicopter, like his skin's coming off and blood's leaking.
And I don't think, I'm not going to speak for them. I don't know if they knew. At that point, I was so invested in just rolling with whatever's going on. I was like, I don't really care, So, but things just keep going, and basically London turns to shit at that point. It's like it's just alien craft overhead. We've got Independence Day going up in the sky. We've got Night of the Living Dead down below. We've got Van Helsing with the medieval friggin' weapon that he got from who God knows where running around. We've got naked chicks running around. And she's wearing clothes now, but it's not doing a whole lot to cover her nudity because we know exactly what she looked like for the first 40% of this movie, So she's doing her thing. And then there's the big reveal at the end that the hero is actually a vampire too. Or at least they believe that he's a vampire. That he kills himself and her. Roll credits. And there's a whole lot more that goes on there. But we could be here for a long time if I try and break it all down. But that's the basic synopsis. And believe me when I tell you that once the movie, it's kind of a slow burn at first, but once this movie gets going into the insanity, it doesn't let you go, to the point where you just don't care what's going on anymore. You're just holding on to the chair going, all right, I'm going to see some shit. I just need to buckle up, put my big boy pants on, and watch the rest of the film.
I think one of the smart things they did, and it probably because Dan O'Bannon was writing this. Now, this movie is based on a book called The Space Vampires, so very on the nose there. The plot is similar, except it takes place in the future. Seductive vampires, they suck face and they suck your life out. But it's very, it's very. The film and the books are both very Lovecraftian. There's like some people say like this actually belongs in the Cthulhu mythos, the way it plays out, because it's got that whole cosmic horror feel to it. But I think what Dan did that was really smart, he said like I've already done Alien. Well, I've already had like Ridley Scott play up the whole mystery of the spaceship and all that, and he gets you through that part really quickly. He just moves you to where the action is going to be, which is going to be on Earth. And I think that was really smart on his part and Toby Hooper's part for following that.
I think the correlation too is we keep doing the cross hatching, the layering of pop culture and Dracula. But when we look at what the Churchill is, it's really the Demeter. It's they bring
totally
the Empire aboard and it decimates the crew.
All
and
right,
you got to be like, you love the vampire at the end. She's wearing the white diaphanous gown of like one of Dracula's brides. It's all there. It's all
mythic
there.
folklore. Yeah, the white is the undead.
Mike has a comment here. What does their exploding the sand specifically say about them? I think it's that all their
vampires crumble to dust.
Yeah, and their fluids are all drained. So their life force is drained out of
Which
them. That's why it's called life force. So
I mean, I know, like
I will admit, I did laugh at some of the explosions.
go ahead.
I like when the one guy runs at the cage and he flies apart. That was like the best. But like in the modern thing, we always see like vampires burning up. They always want to like have vampires like burst into cinders, even when they're not in the sunlight. Like if you stake them, they just go apart. But I really love that they just crumble to dust, because that goes into the old mythos that they were going from.
Yeah, it's also was used a lot, like on Buffy. That may very well have been where Buffy got it from.
And it was just a cool effect. I mean,
this movie isn't without its influence in the vampire undead realm genre. I see a lot of Lifeforce and many movies after it. It's like, okay, that's Lifeforce. I can see where the imagery can capture the person. Sucking the life out of a person, the body shriveling up instantly. I mean, I liked how they progressed the story faster that way. You got a 2-hour window. They were scientific about it, rather than you're prepping to bury the body. You put them in a grave, then they come back, which can take a day or 2, 3 days, a week, who knows what. But I like how scientifically, in a science fiction way, they progress the story forward, even by timing it. They're like, this is going to happen in another hour if we've studied this correctly. So I thought that was a nice, clever way to move the story along.
And when you add a countdown to a film, you get a sense of urgency you don't have in a normal film.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. The only problem I have the only caveat I have about countdowns is that if you're going to have a countdown in a film, I hate it when a film doesn't stay true to the countdown. So it's like if you put a 15-minute timer up there and you're doing it in real time, and then the last 30 seconds of that timer takes 40 minutes on screen, then I'm
with you on that.
I also like roll my eyes whenever I see somebody like get to it like 1 second away from the end. I'm like, really? We're gonna do that?
Yeah, that's very cliche. Yeah.
Which I don't know if they're the first one to do it, but I remember Goldfinger. It's such a roll your eyes cringe moment now, but it was probably pretty cool at the time, where it ends and he stops the timer on 007, and you're just like, oh.
Alfred Hitchcock always had the
there's a little wink and a nod there.
Yeah, the ticking
that has the benefit of being funny.
Yeah.
All right. So, like I said, that's the basic synopsis. I think we also have to recognize that this is a movie of its time, 1985. If you're making a horror movie, you could go for the serious, dramatic horror movie. Or if you wanted to go and grab the crowds, you needed a couple things. You need some great effects, some good kills, and you probably needed some, at least, bare breasts on the screen. That's just the way it was back then.
This movie has 2 major draws to it, and both of them are Matilda May.
Yeah,
that's true. She steals the show. And what's funny is because the censors, which was kind of weird, were very prudish about this film, especially with its international release. They had the full frontal male nudity, but it just didn't wash. What does that say about the time? They were like, well, what do you mean? We got to show both, and they were like, no way, you blur that out, you put a sock on it. We want to see it, and we'll give you a little bit of leeway with the girl, and it's like, okay, that's kind of hilarious.
You have the space vampire who, at most of the film you don't see anything on her, and then the last part of the film she's dressed up like a bride of Dracula, and then you have towards the end the one male vampire, and he looks like Angelus from Buffy, like he's dressed up in that kind of suit,
look,
that total rock star sort of thing. I'm like, I see where you're going with this.
Right.
Plus, they had a lot of shots with the males where there were strategic shots where people, their faces just happen to be in the way of the crotch or something like that. So, make of that what you will, but
they would do that for her for a couple of shots, have like the shadow across her nips, that sort of thing. But like when they're ready to give you the full Monty, they gave you the full Monty.
Yeah, they did.
And it's impressive considering she's only on screen in the version that I watched tonight like 7 minutes. 7 minutes, but damn, that is like the most menacing, beautiful naked woman I've ever seen, because like she looms over the production. And that's the mark of a great villain. If the villain, you still feel the villain even when they're not on screen.
And I will give her one credit. For being an actress on this, and that is, if she had any doubts or insecurity about being on screen naked for that long, she does not show it on screen at all. She's wearing it with full confidence. Like,
I think that's the advantage of
that's great. I love that. Like, that is really great performance.
I think that's the advantage of a European player versus our American actors.
What were you going to say, Lance?
I think the idea too is that, being foreign does help. I mean, she didn't speak English. She learned how to speak English the 6 months she was making this film. Actor. She's a dancer, so I think she was a ballerina. So you can see the way she glides through the movement. Mm-hmm. She's not making any noise, and it's very like she's walking on air, and that works. It works for what I think is supposed to happen for an alien. And, the confidence factor is always big, but there was a big production behind it. I mean, hair, makeup, everything you can imagine. It was designed to make her look perfect. They had makeup artists around her 24/7. Any blemish, any wrinkle, anything you had, that was covered photographically. This is some of the best photography. I mean, Alan Hume, he shot James Bond movies. This is a professional cinematographer. He shot a lot of quality made movies, Return of the Jedi. So the idea of is how do you make that person even more than what they are, just a regular performer? There's a crew behind it. It's lighting, it's camera work, it's film stock, it's makeup, it's hair. This is serious. So it isn't just flip it. It isn't just this video where you see a naked woman. This is art, and
absolutely,
it is poignant.
It was not gratuitous. I will say that for sure. So yeah, I agree with that. Now, speaking of what you were talking about, I want to go into production value for this film, and I'm going to go around the horn to everybody, and I want you to touch on points you want to touch on. What I want to touch on is the stuff that they did in space. And one of the things that I very much appreciated at the beginning, even though it's much slower, is that a lot of their space effects, specifically with the astronauts in zero G and using their packs to get around and stuff like that, was really, really well done. And it's obviously wire work, but for the time, it's incredibly well done. And with a little bit of suspension of disbelief, it feels real. For 1985, it feels incredibly real. Contrast that with some of the stuff that I thought, the other stuff at the beginning of the movie from the space stuff, some of it was hit or miss for me. Some of it looked good. I thought a lot of the stuff inside the alien ship looked really good, but some of the models that they used, the backgrounds didn't fit with the model. So when the Churchill was coming in and solar panels retract, the background looked out of place. I don't know why that would be, because I'm not a photographer.
Some of it ended up looking kind of flat, I thought.
Yeah. It was old school optics and forced perspective. And really, when you do that kind of layering, you got to, even if you're in outer space, you got to think about measurements and distance. How is that going to correlate? Very, very difficult thing to do. And yeah, there were times where I think they did drop the ball on those optics. But I agree with you. The gigantic sets they built for the wire work were fantastic.
Yeah. So
love the little puffs of smoke. For the maneuvering of the spacesuit. So because that's what they do. You just vent little bits of gas to propel you along in space.
And that's not easy. It was obvious that they had someone consult with them because liquid oxygen in space, when you vent it out, it's crystallizes, and so that's why you can see it, but you have to come up with a way to do that on set so that you can see that, but then not poison everybody or everything or whatever it's coming out. So they did some good work there. I thought it looked really good, and they timed the wire works to the puffs of smoke, so whoever was working the wire was waiting for that puff, that visual effect, to then turn them so it looked like they were actually maneuvering themselves.
It was extremely difficult, to the point where they were lucky if they got one shot a day. The wire work for all of that sequence is what put the movie behind in schedule and over budget, because if someone started swinging, they all started swinging. And stabilized, it was a big pain in the ass. And people were getting sick and throwing up in their suits because they were 40 feet up. They said it was a nightmare. Even Steve Railsback was like, get me the hell down here. My nuts are being crushed for the last 8 hours. I mean, the wire work was spot on. I've looked even on the Blu-ray, you can't see the wires. They did such a great job. But this is what set the movie behind. This is what could have potentially destroyed the film, because there was a moment where they did run out of money and people were working free for a couple days till they got extra budget money, and it was all the wire work.
Yeah, it was incredibly impressive. And the last thing I'll say about this before I go to Lance is, not only did they have people moving, in every axis, and they had them on different levels. So I mean, people were yawing, they're rotating, they're going up and down, and then you had people on different levels, with the wires. And then they had people, one point, one of the actors was vertical, floating over one of the coffins, while other people, I mean, just incredibly difficult stuff when you think about the logistics to do it. It looks great. So I was really impressed with that, and it goes to show you that sometimes you got to step back and take some time to think about, what I'm looking at is not real here. How did they do this, and how much work did they put into it? And you really get an appreciation for it. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Lance to talk a little bit about what you saw in the production of the film. So
it's top notch. It's top notch production value for its time. I mean, this is cinema, and it looks great. Even the animation, I like the energy flow of when their souls are leaving. I like how they used light, and they played with light. And added the animation to it so that the animation doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. I thought they did that extremely well by adding the lighting effects as they were photographing, a strobe light and stuff, when energy getting sucked out of people. I was looking at the composition, but once again, Alan Hume, who shoots Bond pictures in 70 millimeter, his composition is spot off. So when they go into a cantered angle, and then they show other actors on the 180, it's an opposite canter angle. And it's like, okay, that's so aesthetically pleasing. I mean, it's fun to look to see how this film was framed, because every bit of it is fantastic. Even in the space effects, where they're starting to rotate the camera 360 degrees or 180 degrees, and you see the astronauts going upside down. Everything is spot on. And the clarity, when she opens her eyes near the end and her contact lenses has
the spiral
spiral in it. You know what I mean? It's like, I forgot that. I forgot all about that. And I was like, wow, that is crystal clear. Top notch, man. These are the people you want on your side when you're making a movie. This is the kind of crew you need on your side to make sure your movie looks top notch. I love the way this movie looks.
It's also worth noting that at this time in 1985, if you were wearing colored contact lenses, these were glass.
Yes.
They were not plastic.
Often quite painful.
Yes, very painful. That you stole exactly what I was going to say, which is, so kudos to whoever was wearing them, the actress and stuff like that, because you could not keep them in for long. You basically had them put in, you did the scene, and you got those things the heck out of your eyes. So.
Yep.
Yeah. Over to you, Steve, on what you saw in production in this film. So,
I will say, I Lance, before we started the show, was mentioned that some of these people had worked on 2001. Well, the minute he said that, I'm like, that totally makes sense, because there is definitely a 2001 flair, especially in the beginning. And I think they I wouldn't say without aping it, I think they very much got the flavor of it right. Especially in the scenes where, the people in the Churchill are going into the alien object, and, they're exploring around in the spacesuits. Some of the spacesuit shots I felt like, were very reminiscent of the pods in 2001. So I felt like that worked. There are other bits that I thought were really interesting. Some of them kind of had varying reactions from me. Like, sometimes I would kind of laugh at it, and other times I'm like, oh my God, this is kind of creepy. I would say like the moment where where you on the helicopter where you had the blood spewing out. The blood spewing out was I did laugh a little bit at that, but then it cohered and congealed into the form of Space Vampira, and that was genuinely creepy. So you would often like get moments like that, which is you know maybe because of the datedness of it, and maybe because of the timing, I kind of had a laughter reaction where I probably wouldn't have in 1985. But a lot of it is really good, and then you've got a lot of the animatronics, which I thought were really really good. They did some really good job with the puppeteering of the dead bodies, having them come to life and then explode. Again, like there were times when just because of the timing, or just because of the way the effect was done back then, I did have a little bit of a laughter reaction. But I have to respect the work that was put into it. They look really believable. The bodies look really creepy, and when they start moving, they work. So this is again one of these movies that kind of goes both ways, but it is really effective for that, and I appreciated the work that they did in that.
I do remember the scene you're talking about, and I think for me, what was off about it was the fact that they were combining what looked like an animated effect, which was the blood was pooling and then turning into the person.
There was an optical effect in the scene, so it looked again. It looked a little flat there.
Yeah, but then they had a practical effect, which I don't think came off right, with actual like wax dummies or something of the actors, and then they're filming the blood. So they're filming it upside down, and then
the blood's pouring out of the mouth,
and the blood's pouring out. And it just doesn't look natural. And it's something that they would either do with CGI now, but back then they could have done it with hand-drawn animation. I think would have looked better, But kudos to them for trying to do it in practical. I
will once again disagree. I thought that looked amazing.
Okay, well, you are allowed.
The only thing that bugged me about that particular scene was the fact that Patrick Stewart's eyes were shut, and then when all the blood's gushing out of him, fake Patrick Stewart's eyes look like doll eyes. Yeah,
and I think some of it is that the blood is going this way, which is kind of odd.
But it's being telekinetically pulled into the middle of the helicopter, so the angle doesn't need to make sense. But I thought, it looked better for like the dead Vice PM, like when it's coming out of him because his eyes are closed. But as soon as you have the Patrick Stewart head with the eyes open, that uncanny valley kind of thing sets in.
Yeah.
But like once Steve said, once it congeals into her, that's when it gets uber creepy right there. As far as that effect goes,
it's just a question of the animatronics. I honestly think that the animatronics weren't working well, and that's why I was leaking out the eyes instead of the mouth and the nose.
I thought it was supposed to leak out of everywhere because the eyes are full of capillaries just coming out the eyes, the nose, the ears, the mouth, all the orifices that we have.
That's what I thought too. So I just thought that the biggest thing for me was not necessarily the blood. I mean, it was one of those things that I was just like, I understood what it was and I was willing to let it go. It was that this was very obviously a doll or something, or a wax doll or something. That's
the open eyes. That was
the animatronic, and
what's look better with the eyes shut.
That's probably the bloodiest scene in the movie. Whereas there's none of this vampire fangs. There's nothing ripping open throats or necks. It's the life force. It's the essence of a person's being. It isn't their blood. Which is so refreshing. It was like, okay, good, because I don't ever need to see fangs and then a vampire sucking blood out of a person ever again cinematically, to be perfectly honest. But this was a nice touch to say, okay, energy. That's basically what, and the site, getting into the paranormal aspect of it. We all know psychic vampires, and that's even a joke in the movie. We all know a vampire. Yeah, a person can just suck your energy. We know these people. So I think that was a nice play on words. And I thought it was fun. Even as a kid, I was like, hey, this has got my attention because I'm tired of seeing the old stuff.
Definitely. I am going to go to Jeff next of what you saw in the production of the film. So.
Well, the production is excellent. Like I said, I had some issues with some of the space stuff. Some of the spaceship stuff exterior looked very flat. I really did dig the design of the alien craft, which I only found out today was based off of an artichoke plant of all things.
Yep.
I really dug the scary umbrella design that opens up off of it. I like the organic nature of things. So I like them really thinking outside the box, even inside. you can definitely see you've got that Giger influence in some of the architecture, but Dan's still trying to find a way away from that, do his own thing, and not be completely biomechanical. I'm sure Dan working with Hooper and that sort of thing. But the what they do with the production value gets really high end when you find out that the effects guy on this was John Dykstra, who helped film, found ILM. He'd been working on Star Wars, so he knows his way around the animatronics. He knows his way around the painted effects on the cells, and so there's a whole level of amazeballs right there when you look at the things that are going on. Some of the puppetry is a little bit dated compared to what they can do today. If you, like, for instance, look at the Vogons from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, done by the Henson Group, those things are completely believable. Or even just a few years later with like Audrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors, an amazing puppet, but that's putting all the production into a particular thing. And they had to spread this out quite a bit. The exploding of London going to hell. They got a big boost in that because there was actually a park nearby that had a miniature London setup, and they used that to film all of their mini explosions going off around London. And like, hey, we'll just build some stuff onto this that we can actually blow up, and we'll use that. So that was a pretty neat thing that they had something that they could do some forced perspective on there. And you bring in the score, like when the film opens, it tells you that the score is being done by like the London Symphony Orchestra, and Mancini's conducting it. Now, we had somebody over here in America, I forget who it was. I think, no, it wasn't Horner. It was first offered to Horner. But what you hear, his elements of the score played out on that are just so good. There's this eerie sort of feeling, all of it. And for those of you who are into like classic British horror and sci-fi, this is both like kind of a love letter and hammer. And films like Dr. Quartermass, you start to get vibes of that in there. So like they paid their dues, they paid their respects to the past, and they brought it as forward as they could. And it really sings in the production value. You see it. They spent the time, they spent the money. Canon really wanted to be taken as a legitimate studio at this point. So they put big money and big people and big ideas into this. They didn't want to just be known as like, hey, we do the funky, weird kind of ninja films and silly films and things like that. This was their chance to really be taken seriously. This was their Lord of the Rings. And the next few films that they did after this, they were putting like $25 million into the budgets. And unfortunately, it's what ended up killing Canon Films. Masters of the Universe and some of the films that followed, they put a lot of money into. They just didn't land. But bless their hearts, you can see it in the production. They didn't waste any money. There's no fat on this. I can see every bit of value in the screen.
See, I definitely see that. I'll be honest, though. When I saw Henry Mancini's come up in the opening credits, I was really excited. And I felt a little let down by the score. I thought that it was adequate.
And that's because we are probably hearing the American score, which had some of his music cut out, and they got an American composer to fill in, because that opening sequence, when we get the space stuff, I'm like, oh, well, this doesn't feel appropriate.
Yeah.
And but when you hear his score, you really hear his score. But I can see why it's so uneven, because we're not getting what the original intention was of the film.
Interesting. Yeah, because I was...
Like Lance says, there's two versions of this film out there.
When I saw his name, that's a legendary name. It's another one that, like we were talking about composers last time. That is a legendary name, and I have very rarely been let down by anything he does. And then it was kind of like, okay, But at the same time...
let me tell you, Mancini wanted to do this film after reading the script. He got excited when he was told, like, about the first 10, 15 minutes of this, like, there's almost no dialogue. It's all just people exploring this ship. And he's like, oh, I can't wait to score that.
And for all of you out there who don't know, Henry Mancini, probably best known for the Peter Gunn theme, but also, even more importantly than that, the Pink Panther theme.
Pink Panther.
Yes.
Yeah. So, all right. So from here, I'm going to go to Steve first, and we're going to go around the horn for the next 15, 20 minutes, and we're going to do the thing like we did with Excalibur and just start talking about cast, because there's a lot of cast to talk about here. Different people.
Another film with a lot of cast.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, Steve, I'm going to go to you first.
Okay. I guess I'll start off. I don't know like all the names of these characters, of these actors, unfortunately, but I want to start off with the guy that played Kane.
Peter
and
Firth.
I will. Oh, Peter Firth.
Firth.
Okay, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
he's the first. Yeah, that actually explains everything. Okay, yeah, this guy, I will say, like, this was my favorite character in this whole movie. The minute that he shows up, it's like, okay, finally we have a character I can root for, because up to this point, we had not seen Carswell or for very long. You know, he's presumed dead at that point, and then there's an entire period of like at least half an hour where you have no idea who the main character of this movie is. Like, not at all. No clue at all. And I got a lot of it is, you know, they're following the Dracula formula, etc. But it still leads this movie into an issue where you don't know who the main character is for a good chunk of time. And in that time, you know, it kind of is hard to really, you know, latch onto anybody. But then this guy shows up, Peter Firth. He's brought in, you know, as his colonel of the Special Air Services, and it's really funny how he firstly shows up, because first thing he does is try to get a cameraman and have his camera taken away because he doesn't want to be filmed. And it's like this guy is a badass the whole way through. Like, he is the one guy absolutely committed to fighting these monsters. Like, and he is the whole way, and he gets some really awesome moments. He gets some awesome moments against, you know, the guy that looks like Angelus. You know, he kills two of these vampires pretty much by himself. You know, and all of this, and a lot of that is the way that Peter Firth really plays the character, because he comes across as this old school British cop in many ways. That's the way he kind of holds himself. You know, if he was like a detective character, he would look like that. Except that this guy also plays it up with a certain amount of badassery because he is the dedicated vampire hunter. And on top of that, he is the one character who up to this point is written competently. You know, he's not making stupid decisions. You know, he's not letting the vampires just walk out the door and not, you know, providing proper protocols or anything like that. He's asking the right questions. You know, he's investigating. You know, he's doing his job, and you really like this character. And I will say he and Carswell, I forget his name, end up being the two main characters that hold the rest of the movie together. And a lot of it is the way that the characters are written, you know, especially the Railsback character, but also Kane.
Carlson.
And yeah, Carlson. I don't know why I keep messing his name up. Yeah, but it's Kane and Carlson who I think are the absolute linchpin that this story revolves around. You know, Kane because he's the badass guy who is trying to keep everything on point, and Carlson because he's the one who is the most emotionally involved in the story. But I really kind of felt like Kane, you know, because of that performance, was the one that was really kind of holding a lot of this movie up on his back. And I was impressed with both of them, but I really felt like Kane was the one character, you know, that really worked for me. And I think Firth pulled it off perfectly. Really dug it, the way that he played it. And he's also, I will add, very cool, calm, and collected at the right times. He knows when to sit back and watch things happen. And then he intervenes, and he knows exactly when to intervene, and that sense of timing is great.
That's one of the funniest scenes is when Steve Railsback starts slapping the nurse around. It's like,
yeah,
it's like, oh, that's all right. I've always been a voyeur, and he just sits down.
Yeah, because he wants to see what he'll do. He's watching Carlson as much as
Perfect
he's watching
British
her.
humor and timing, right there.
Yeah, it's just great. He's a great, yeah. He
That
gets all those aspects, the humor and the serious drama. I mean, he, you know, he's a Firth.
And Kane is SAS, so
Yes.
you know, he's basically been brought in to put the shit back in the bottle, you know. So
Yep,
that's right. You know, he's like the equivalent of like our special forces, our high speed guys over here. That's what the SAS would do. You call them in when the shit's hit the fan, they're going to straighten it out.
Yeah,
and he absolutely demonstrates the badassery of somebody who's been in the service.
Yeah,
yeah, he's great. He was great.
He is a very good character. Peter Firth is a great actor.
I thought it was funny too because initially, because of the way he treated the reporter, did you guys think like, oh, this is going to be a character we're supposed to hate, and then you end up rooting for him the rest of the film?
Yeah. He definitely grows on you. I also like the way that he tricked Patrick Stewart's character in the asylum.
Yes.
So that was great. So I'm going to go to Jeff next for a character. So.
I'm going to go with I'm going to stay America, and I'm going to go with Steve Railsback as Colonel Carlson. Just because I've been a fan of Railsback throughout the 80s. He's done a lot of amazing films. Nothing ever really. Go ahead.
I got to mention, Ed Gein. I don't know if you're going to bring that up, but where I know him best from, the minute I saw him, I was excited to see him. He played Dwayne Barry for 2 episodes in the X-Files. Well, 3 episodes in the X-Files. So Dwayne Barry is a big deal in the X-Files.
Hunt for Red October is where I know him from.
Yeah, Hunt for Red October. There's of course he played Ed Gein, but I think my favorite movie is where he is called the Stuntman, which is absolutely absolutely magnificent film.
Did you guys know about his appearance as Dwayne Barry in the X-Files? Though?
Oh yeah, I watched all the X-Files.
Oh yeah, check that out. He's an ex-FBI agent who people believe he's insane and a conspiracy theorist because he thinks he was abducted, and he ends up taking Scully and offering her in return for himself, so he doesn't have to go with the aliens again. And he ends up dying very badly. But his performance and in all of the episodes he's in is fantastic. It's really good.
Well, the guy, he's never one of these guys who got like the big star, the big star power, that sort of thing. But for people who are into movies, when you see him, you know him, and you're like, okay, I really like this guy. I know he's going to give me a very solid performance. And he doesn't fail here, despite how unusual this particular script is and the position he's being put in as the Mina character in this space Dracula story. He just sells it. He goes for it. But when he's the vampire's invading his mind, like Dracula waiting outside the house and like messing with Lucy or Mina, and he's having these experiences, and he wakes up drenched in sweat. And you see him kind of losing his mind because his mind's being inhabited by another force, and he's trying to wrestle things out. Unlike Kane, he's not the hero; he's the victim of the story. He's just trying to get his life back in the way that Jonathan Harker or Wilhelmina were trying to get their lives back. If Dracula went away, I think they'd have been like, okay, fine, he's somebody else's problem. We just want to live our lives, and that's this guy. He just wants his life back. He's gone through so much, and the pivotal moment for me is like when he's grabbing Patrick Stewart's limp body, and the vampiress is trapped. Her psyche is trapped in it. He's like just screaming, like, let go of me, and you watch it. He's getting drawn closer and closer. Like they keep interposing her and Stewart as he's getting closer and closer. She's just imposing her will upon him, and you just feel the emotional agony this guy is going through as he's being taken along for a ride that he cannot get off of. And I just can't say enough good things about him in this film. And I love the chemistry between him and Kane, this buddy cop thing that kind of happens. And my favorite moment between the two of them when they start really coming together and trusting each other is when they realize just how bad it's gotten. They go to see the PM, and they realize the PM's infected, and he grabs his secretary and he starts to suck the juice out of her. And instead of trying to save the woman, they both just look at each other and go like, nope, to the helicopter. This place is going down.
There was no heroics there. They just
no heroics. Like
Kane is being smart. Kane is being smart because like he knows if the PM is compromised, we are screwed.
Everybody in this building's compromised. That so goes against so many of the conventions, like even in the 80s, because, the 80s was the big action decade, and those two dudes just look at each other. Not a word has to pass. They're like, chopper, we're out.
That's because he's not an American action hero. He is a British action hero.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, that was great.
Real quick before I go to Lance, I got to bring this up because, I wanted to give everybody out there who's watching this just an idea how beautiful this movie is, genuinely, at different times.
Oh, you got some pictures?
Well, here's one. This is a scene from inside the alien spacecraft. I mean, look at that.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
That is absolutely stunning. I mean, that is something that you could look at today and be impressed with. So,
a real.
And see, there you go. Like, look at the organic design without trying to rip off Giger. And they even make a little comment that going through the passages were like going through arteries. And I look at stuff like that, and I see like sphincters and intestines and all these organelles that you would see inside your own body. Mm-hmm. Wonderfully done.
So I saw that image as I was looking through some stuff, and I was like, I got to show everybody out there this. I mean, that's an idea of the eye candy that you get in this film. And it is there, you know. So even though we're talking about, you know, we're going back and forth, and this is a review. I mean, when we see stuff that doesn't hit us right, we're feel free to say we say it, you know. But it's a beautiful film, you know.
We do not simp for films here.
Yeah. So next I'm going to go to Lance for someone in the cast.
Well, I liked Frank Finlay as Falada, Dr. Falada's performance. How he was just the pillar, man. He was just rock solid through this, and he was figuring it out. He was like Kane. He was trying to figure it out, and his creepy aspect of how he wanted to know if there was something beyond life, you know, the study of death or beyond that, and how he threw himself into his work, and how he just looked great with that suits and the old style 80s haircut. He commanded authority in every scene he was in.
But you know what movie I know him from that I was excited about him? Yeah, Porthos.
Yeah, he's Porthos.
Awesome. So.
And that's what I remember too, because he's Shakespearean. He has the voice. He has the accent. Mm-hmm. You know, he was selling it. And even on his death scene was just amazing. Here I go, and then there he goes. You know, it's just
he's Van Helsing gone wrong in this film.
Right. He did what he can do. He knew he was infected, but he was ready to see what was going to happen next. Mm-hmm. And you could see that in his face when they put all those prosthetics, and he's bubbling and ready to expire. And he doesn't go after Kane for extra life. He wants to see what's happening. And I thought that was a cool touch. He
like a true scientist.
Yeah, he didn't succumb to the craziness. He was ready. Here I go. He wanted to see what happened next. And I thought he was a scene stealer. You know, every scene he was in, he stole the scene, and I liked it.
Tell me,
he had a very Hammer horror flair to him.
Absolutely,
like
absolutely, yeah.
I'm gonna throw out another comparison for him in this movie, though, because we're talking about Dracula and Dracula vibes. I got a really Christopher Lee vibe off his performance in this film from when Christopher Lee played Dracula.
I can totally see that.
Yeah. He was fun. He was a fun element in this film. And even when that animatronic hits the cell bars and the body explodes into all that.
I love that scene.
It's comical because it's like in their mouth and their hair, and they're like,
you know, I think they did. I think that was lifted from Hammer, because I remember a scene where Christopher Lee as Dracula has this very bloody mouth and he has this smile on his face. When he dies, Falada looks a little bit like that. I
know the scene you're talking about.
Right.
All right. So
and to say like Christopher Lee would have easily fit into that character. So like, quite a compliment to what he's doing with it.
Yeah,
right. I thought it was fun.
Now I'm really split on. I've got two people that I wanted to bring up, but we're running short on time. I'm just gonna say one name and a movie, and you guys need to go check it out for yourself, because I'm gonna talk about somebody else. Michael Goddard is in this film playing somebody named Bukowski. Mm-hmm. He plays one of the bad guys at For Your Eyes Only, called Locke. And he's great. Go watch that. That's all I'm gonna say. The person I do want to bring up plays Sir Percy in this movie, and it's Aubrey Moore.
Yeah.
Aubrey Moore is fantastic in horror movies, all sorts of horror movies. He's been in numerous Tales from the Crypt episodes. He was in one of the Tales from the Crypt movie. I think the worst one, the Bordello of Blood movie with Dennis Miller.
Yeah,
but he is fantastic in it. So he's good at it. The movie is shit, but he's good at it. So sorry,
it's the same thing too.
Yeah, Aubrey Moore brings this snarky, sleazy, underscored corruption into a lot of his characters. That he has this ability with his eyes and his face to tell this tale that you're looking at this guy going, I don't trust you as far as I can throw you, and I don't know why.
I mean,
And
when
that's
you
what- you know,
when you
and-
say that, it's like I'm watching the character he played in A Clockwork Orange, and he's gone up the political ladder, and this is where he's ended up. You know,
Yeah.
he's moved on up because he
Yeah.
really feels like that guy all over again.
yeah. But Aubrey Moore is fantastic in these roles, but he's just an accomplished actor. He's been in quite a few things. He was, like you say, he's in Clockwork Orange. He was in The Wicker Man.
Yep.
Like I said, a
Yes.
number of Twilight Zone, Tales from the Crypt. He was in Legend of the Mummy. I mean, he's been in quite a few things, but he's been in stuff like voice acting for video games and stuff like that. He's a very, very talented actor, and it's worth checking him out, you know, the stuff he does. And I think this is one of the things that I love about this format that we're doing now is that we are getting exposed to all sorts of professional actors. And sometimes it's fun to follow those people who weren't the leads over into the next movie and just see how these names keep popping up. And why do they keep popping up? Because they are professionals, because they are actors or actresses who can be given a role and be that role, you know? And I think that's been so cool to see. And we've seen quite a few of them. We started out this whole process with a British film. Now I can't even remember what film we started out on, but we've had a lot of British actors, but it just shows you how much talent was there, you know, and how it was nurtured. It's been a cool process that this journey we've been on. And I think I can speak for everybody that we've enjoyed it and we're going to keep doing it.
Yeah, yeah. And what's great about it is these people just don't show up and hit their mark. It's about commanding their character for the scene, being relevant. They're just not background noise. And with films like this, you know, however great or imperfect, sometimes those performances is as much eye candy as the sets. It's like, oh, this is a fun person to watch, and they're going to do something, and they usually do, and it's fun. I think it's the right path we're going because it's opening up exposures, because now there's movies that some of us haven't seen, and we're exploring them and going, oh wow, I didn't know this person was in there. And that's what it's all about, exposure, which is what I see little of. I mean, you go on Zitter, Twitter, whatever it's called, and all you're going to see is, if you say Toby Hooper, that's all you're going to see is a Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I've seen the movie twice in my life. I never need to see it again. You know, it's enough. It's okay. We need more shout outs of Kubrick and The Shining. It's people are being so redundant with what other people are saying. And when we come here, we're not being redundant with what other people are saying. I think it's a different element of exposure and a learning process, because it's fun to see things that I haven't seen. You know,
I don't think it's hyperbole to say that while the Greeks, as far as the West goes, like you could say the Greeks invented acting, but I think the British perfected it. And that's why we see the quality we do.
Now, before we wrap this up with some final thoughts and we get out of here, speaking of British actors, I have to give a shout out to a guy who never saw a script he would turn down, but an incredible actor who retired at the young age of 90 this week. Michael Caine, congratulations on a very successful career. You have done some absolutely classics as a movie. You've done some stinkers as well, but you know what? That's going to happen. So,
and he was actually offered the role of Caine in Lifeforce, but turned it down.
Really?
To quote Michael Caine,
It would have been
when he's asked about it, it's like, I have not seen Jaws 4, but I did see the house that it paid for, and it's lovely.
Yeah.
pay for my mother's house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of Jaws 4, one of the few movies that can make Bordello of Blood look like a average film. So, you know,
so bad.
On the other hand, you have The Man Who Would Be King, which is outstanding.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Or The Prestige. Or
I just watched the original Get Carter a couple of weeks ago,
which is amazing.
Or
this goes on. The list just goes on, and it's one of the greats that deserves a retirement.
Yeah, A Bridge Too Far, another great movie. You know,
it just lists longer than my arm.
Yep.
Zulu Dawn. We could keep going.
So enjoy your retirement, Sir Michael Caine. I believe he's knighted.
Yes.
And may you have
British Sal. There
Yeah,
you go.
exactly. So with that, I'm going to go around to my fellow Crusaders for final thoughts and wrap it up, and we will get out of here. So Lance, final thoughts.
Final thoughts is check this flick out. It's Halloween, it's got some good spirited fun. It's got some good retro fun. I think, like Steve said, you're not going to be bored. You could be frustrated, a little like, what the hell's going on? But then agreed, once the team gets together, this movie keeps rolling. And it's one of those rare things where that team works in the last half of the movie. And it always boggles my mind why, once again, like Jeff said, why weren't these guys bigger stars? Because these dudes commanded this flick, and it's fun. So this is one that's I always go back to. If it comes to Toby Hooper, it's like, that's it for me. That's it. Nothing else. That's the movie that I will watch over and over. That's the movie that I own on,
Nice.
That's just it. So that's the Toby Hooper movie to watch, is Lifeforce. I'd say that's the one you want to go check out, and you're going to be pleased. So, that's why my suggestion, I could have splintered out into something maybe more with a better story, maybe something with, that's more cohesive, but it just stuck out in my mind. Lifeforce, we're going for there. And I knew some of these reactions were going to happen, because it's like, okay, this is bullshit. Oh, wait, but it's kind of fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, and then I'm all in it. I'm all in on the last half of the movie, and I know exactly when that happens. It's like, okay, that's the point where these guys are a team, and the audience is aboard, and they have something to really invest in, and it's a fun flick. So, not perfect by any means, not anything that's going to change cinema in any way, but I do think it's a movie worth watching.
Absolutely. And sometimes, we're here, and our job when we're on this podcast is to break it down for all of you, but we're also recommending films, but we got to be at least somewhat critical. But I think we can speak for all of us that we enjoyed this movie. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, is enjoy the movie. So, there's that. Yeah. Steve, final thoughts.
Yeah, I will say, I enjoyed this movie. I think that you should watch it, just to kind of get a sense of, how far you can go into a movie where you think that it's kind of going off the rails, and then they find a way to bring you back and they make you care. And I love that. It's a movie that demonstrates the importance of having a clear protagonist, because once you start getting one, oh my God, is it good. And I will say, early on, this movie definitely hits my Mystery Science Theater buttons, where I kind of want to riff on it.
Yeah,
that's not a bad thing. I'm entertained. I may not be entertained for the reasons they intended it, but I was entertained by that. But it's just one of those things where if you're patient with it, then it will get legitimately good. It will get legitimately interesting. It will capture your attention. You're going to have two characters that you're going to root for. They get some awesome moments in it. You get some creepy moments. You get some real Shutter Island type of weirdness at various times.
Yeah,
particularly in the asylum scenes.
Right.
And then you get Night of the Living Dead, type of action. All of that comes together, and they seem so poorly connected, but it's still fun, and it comes together somehow. This is a movie that is held together on spit and baling wire, but it's entertaining consistently, even if it's not always for the right reasons, and it's entertaining, and that's not a bad thing to be at all. Not at all.
There's worse things to be remembered by.
Yeah.
Final thoughts, Jeff.
I have a great appreciation from films that manage to sear themselves permanently into my brain. I think of films like Repo, the Genetic Opera, or the original Suspiria, or hell, even the remake of Suspiria. That thing's never leaving my brain. Lars von Trier's Antichrist. They're just 2001. There are movies that just stay with you. They haunt you. They become a part of your psychological makeup. They're there forever. And this is one of these films. This is a film that I've probably only watched 3 times in my lifetime, and I still love it. I still adore it. I still remember almost everything without having to go back to it. And that's because it is so strange. It's so unique. It's so weird. It so breaks the normal movie progression conventions, the sort of beats that you would expect. It gets oddly experimental, and for me, by the end, it all works because we have this slow kind of eerie build up into things, and then we have like a little mystery going on, and it turns out to be a misdirection, and you catch up by the time the characters catch up, but by the time they catch up, the apocalypse is upon you. Now what the hell are you going to do? And the climax for me pays off, and the fact that they can take all these disjointed ideas and bring them together, and it all works in the end, is a big 2 thumbs up for me. I love this film. I hope everybody goes to see it after this.
Very cool. I'm just going to say that one of the things I love about doing this show, and we've been doing it for a while now, and we're just getting going, is that it's exposed me to movies that I hadn't seen and that might have been on my radar, didn't go on my radar, but has allowed me to expand my horizons, which I think is always important. And I'm just going to give a shout out here. A while ago, I don't even know how long ago it was, we watched a movie called Blow Up that was recommended to us by Lance. Peter First's character in this movie reminds me of Thomas in that movie for some reason. You know, they just very much the mannerisms and everything. But it's like, these are 2 movies I'd never seen before, and I'm putting those 2 things together and doing stuff like that. And this is the journey that we're on. This is the journey that we're taking all of you on. So come take this journey with us. You know, come take this journey with us and watch these films. Watch stuff that you haven't seen before, because you may find gems that you're like, this is great, or you'll find stuff that you're like, yeah, I don't really care for this, but you tried it. You know, so come in the water with us. The water's fine.
Get out of your comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You won't regret it.
Yeah. So with that said, Steve is on the clock next. He will be choosing our next
what did
film.
Steve went to pick?
So I'm excited to see what Steve is going to pick out. I know Lance is going to be at a film festival next week, so good luck, Lance, at the film festival. We expect you to take all the awards home. And did I just cut out?
Which film are you taking to this one?
I don't know if you can still hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Wave your hands if you can still hear me, because my headphones aren't working. Okay, so I can still talk. I just can't be heard.
All right.
So with that, I'm going to say I'm going to cut it out here now because my headphones aren't working. So all of you have a great weekend. Make sure to keep that popcorn warm. Get in that comfy chair and watch some film this weekend. And on behalf of myself and my fellow Cinema Crusaders, we are out of here. See ya, folks.